Today's sermon is titled Humanistic Judaism and Honoring Human Rights Day, to be delivered by Mary Raskin. The sermon covers the following principles. Principle 1, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Principle 3, acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Principle 4, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. And Principle 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Mary Raskin is a member of the Kol Shalom Community for Humanistic Judaism in Portland, Oregon. Mary also serves as a national president for the Society of the Humanistic Judaism. She is a certified ritual leader and recently completed her studies to become a humanistic rabbi. She will be ordained in April 2022. Congratulations, Mary.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here. And even via Zoom, it's wonderful to be here with you. So today I will be talking about Human Rights Day and Humanistic Judaism. So first, a bit about Humanistic Judaism. Our movement is almost 60 years old and was begun by Rabbi Sherwin Wine in Detroit, Michigan. Our Jewish practices are based on a humanistic and non-theistic approach to traditional Jewish holidays and life cycle events. We create new liturgy based on the ethical core of Jewish history, literature, and culture. Our movement has an umbrella organization, which you heard mentioned, the Society for Humanistic Judaism, and this supports our member communities in the US and Canada. Our movement institute trains humanistic Jewish ritual leaders and rabbis, and we have a sister institute in Israel who also trains and ordains humanistic rabbis. And as you heard earlier, I recently completed the requirements for me to be a rabbi, and my ordination is next April. My community in Portland, Oregon is named Kol Shalom, which means voice of peace, and it was founded about 28 years ago. About 10 years ago, we began to hold a special Friday evening Shabbat as part of a national effort by the North American rabbinic group called Truah, the Rabbinic Call for Human Rights. They launched the first Human Rights Shabbat in 2008. The goals for the Shabbat were to come together to recognize the connections between Jewish values and human rights, and to pledge to honor our obligations to ensure the human rights of every individual. While we are far from the world where the ideals of the Declaration are fully realized, we feel it is important to celebrate this groundbreaking document and its proclamation of shared values of human equality and dignity. So the question is, why celebrate this document in community? And it's because when we gather in our spiritual community, we reflect on the values that are important to us. When we reflect on our values in community, we inspire each other. We give each other hope during uncertain times. We give each other strength when we are tired and burnt out. Today is such a day. Today, we pause in our daily lives in order to revitalize our spiritual batteries to honor human rights. International Human Rights Day is observed every December 10th. It honors the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the document that was signed 73 years ago in 1948. Our goal today is to reacquaint ourselves with the rights spelled out in the Declaration. What are those rights? Do we support those rights? And if we do support those rights, what actions are we taking? And this is the most important question. To support rights means to accept obligations. Rights are meaningless without obligations. Acknowledging these rights, accepting our obligations, and following through with action comes from community. It is in community where we can make change. Our story begins with the formation of the United Nations in 1945 following World War II. In 1946, the UN created the Human Rights Commission. Representing the United States was Eleanor Roosevelt, who also actively participated in the writing of the Declaration. In response to the question of where do universal rights begin, here's how she responded. In small places, close to home, so close and so small that they cannot be seen on any maps of the world. Yet they are the world of the individual person, the neighborhood he lives in, the school or college he attends, the factory, farm, or office where she works. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity, without discrimination. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning anywhere. Without concerted citizen action to uphold them close to home, we shall look in vain for progress in the larger world. The Declaration was originally voted in favor by 48 of the 58 members of the UN. There were no votes against, although 8 abstained and 2 did not vote. Today, there are 192 nations in the UN, and all have signed the Declaration. One of the guiding thinkers behind the Declaration, French jurist and judge René Cassin, used an architectural analogy to describe the Declaration. He compared it to the porch of a classical Greek temple. So think, there's a foundation, steps going up to the platform, 4 columns topped by a triangular wall. The foundation is supported by Articles 1 and 2 with their principles of dignity, liberty, equality, and brotherhood. The steps leading up to the temple are the 7 paragraphs of the preamble, which sets out the reason for the Declaration. The main body of the Declaration forms 4 columns. The first of those columns, Articles 3 to 11, is about the rights of the individual, such as the right to life and the prohibition of slavery. The second column, Articles 12 to 17, involves the rights of the individual in civil and political society. The third column, Articles 18 to 21, is concerned with spiritual, public, and political freedoms, such as freedom of religion and freedom of association. The fourth column, 22 to 27, sets out social, economic, and cultural rights. Finally, the last 3 articles, 28 to 30, provide the triangular top, which binds the structure together. These articles emphasize the mutual duties of every individual to one another and to society. Although the Declaration is not legally binding, its contents have been incorporated into legal treaties and national constitutions. It's influenced legal, political, and social developments on a national and global basis. So now that we know about the kinds of rights that are in the Declaration, our next question is, do we support them? The answer is yes, of course we do. The support for these rights we can see represented in the UU principles and in the values of humanistic Judaism. So specifically, I will compare UU principles 1, 6, and then 3 and 4 together to the preamble, Article 1, and then Articles 18 and 19 together. So UU Principle 1, which you've heard this morning, and Article 1 both emphasize individual rights. Principle 1, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Article 1, all humans are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in the spirit of brotherhood. UU Principle 6 and the preamble emphasize our world community and the human family. Principle 6 reads, we affirm and promote the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. The preamble begins with, whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and unalienable rights of all the members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Now, therefore, the General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations. I grouped UU Principles 3 and 4 with Articles 18 and 19 because they reflect the ideas of freedom of expression and the search for truth. UU Principles 3 and 4 are as follows. We affirm and promote acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. And we affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Article 18 reads, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes the freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in community with others in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. And Article 19, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. Within Humanistic Judaism, we express similar beliefs in our value statements. For the value of human agency, we say people have the power to achieve global survival, happiness, and dignity using their own abilities. Ethics are determined by the consequences of each action toward the betterment of life. For the value of critical thinking, we rely on science, evidence, reason, experimentation, empathy, creativity, and artistic expression to address Jewish and universal human questions and to help improve the world and ourselves. We are committed to passing these values on to present and future generations through education and by our example. For the value of social justice, we seek a future where the dignity and freedom of every human being is upheld. We must repair the world through community service and by advancing human rights, anti-racism, and the separation of church and state. We have now reacquainted ourselves with the International Declaration of Human Rights. We see that our communities have documented similar values. What comes next? Action through community. It is through community action that we honor our values and obligations. Your community's welcoming and mission statements address that action. In your welcome statement, you endeavor to create a safe and welcoming environment for people of diverse backgrounds to share in their search for truth and meaning. You are united by shared values. Your community is a place to put your beliefs into action to make the world a better place. In your mission statement, you explicitly strive to build community through love, to support spiritual growth, and to promote social and environmental justice. Here are a few of the actions your community took through your social and environmental justice work. Brought new and gently used books to children and families in San Simeon to promote love of reading. Distributed breakfast bags through the SLO County Food Bank to Cambria and San Simeon families. Helped with community-supported food distribution to local families at the beginning of the pandemic. Supplied San Simeon families with locally sewn face masks and hand sanitizer. Distributed blankets and jackets to the homeless community in Cambria. And purchased sturdy plastic bags, socks, personal items, and stacks for homeless residents. And as we heard today, you are continuing this effort. In all these ways, your community has honored the aspirations of the International Declaration of Human Rights. As Eleanor Roosevelt said, we must begin in the small places close to home. And that is what we are doing within our communities. Today, we have honored the Human Rights Day by reaffirming the rights spelled out in the International Declaration of Human Rights. We have shown our understanding of our obligations to those rights by codifying them in our principles and value statements. Our communities show support of those obligations in the programs and actions that we take. The consequences of our beliefs have led to positive action. I will end my talk with a story from the ancient rabbis and the words of a song from a contemporary rabbi. The story is from about 2,000 years ago. After the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, the early rabbis gathered to write their thoughts in a book called the Mishnah. Included in the Mishnah is a chapter called Pirkei Avot, which means Ethics of Our Fathers. This story is from Ethics of Our Fathers. And one more thing I need to tell you is that the early rabbis began their discussions with a question, and so too does this story. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked, "What is the right way, the best way that a person should conduct themselves?" Rabbi Eliezer said, "With a good eye," that is to be aware of one's surroundings, to be observant. Rabbi Yehoshua said, "As a good friend." Rabbi Yossi said, "As a good neighbor." Rabbi Shimon said, "As one who sees consequences, that is, one who understands the impact of one's words and actions." Rabbi Elazar said, "With a good heart." Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai carefully considered their words, and then he responded, "I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar because his words, 'with a good heart,' include all of your words." And this is true for your community. It is with all the attributes of a good heart that you support the aspirations of the human rights document. And now here are the words of a song from a contemporary rabbi, Rabbi Wein, the founder of Humanistic Judaism. He also begins with questions. He asks, "Where is my light?" And he responds, "My light is in me." He asks, "Where is my hope?" And he says, "My hope is in me." "Where is my strength?" "My strength is in me and in you." Thank you.